Bujuani, my name is Solomon Milner. I'm a citizen of the Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa Indians.
Hi everybody, my name is Jaime Fuentes. I'm Pomo from the Hopland Band of Pomo Indians, and we are on the executive board of the Native American Student Association. Thank you. Today we'll be giving a land acknowledgement as a formal statement, a public recognition of the indigenous peoples who have been dispossessed and displaced from their ancestral homelands and territories. These statements are the first step towards building a more inclusive future where we eliminate the ongoing erasure of indigenous voices, lives, and history.
The University of Michigan is located on the territory of the Anishinaabeg people. The Ann Arbor campus currently resides on land ceded through the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Additionally, in 1817, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations made the largest single land transfer to the University of Michigan, ceded through the Treaty of Fort Meigs, with the agreement that their children would be educated in perpetuity. We assert the sovereignty of tribal lands and acknowledge the painful, historical, and ongoing genocide, forced assimilation, and displacement of Native communities in the establishment of the university. We affirm contemporary and ancestral Anishinaabeg ties to this land, the profound contributions of Native American peoples to this institution, and the university's commitment to educate the children of Native ancestors. We similarly recognize, acknowledge, and affirm the historic and contemporary solidarities and intersections between Black and Indigenous peoples, both on and off campus.
Acknowledging the land today is an important first step towards healing that needs to be followed by further action. We invite all of you to think how you can support the Black and Indigenous communities that surround you. Thank you.
Miigwech.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Welcome to the Memorial Keynote Lecture for the 2023 University of Michigan Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Symposium. My name is Tabby Chavis, and I'm the Vice Provost and Chief Diversity Officer for Equity and Inclusion. I'm honored to greet you and thank you for your participation in this university celebration of Dr. King's birthday. I also thank Jaime Fuentes, a PhD student in Rackham studying microbiology and immunology, and Solomon Milner, an LS&A senior majoring in English and communications, for opening our program by reading the territorial acknowledgement. The university's public celebration of Dr. King's birthday began in 1987 as one of the outcomes of student activism and protests of the Black Action Movement. Since that time, in lieu of regularly scheduled classes, the university has provided opportunities for educational enrichment, supporting spaces and resources for our greater communities to unite and celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. King. The 2023 MLK Symposium Memorial Keynote Lecture is co-sponsored by the Office of Academic Multicultural Initiatives and the Stephen M. Ross School of Business. The MLK Planning Committee is made up of staff, faculty, and students from across the university. Could the members of the 2023 Planning Committee please stand or wave as possible? Over the next several weeks, U of M schools, colleges, units, and their students, faculty, and staff will present numerous opportunities through various formats to learn of Dr. King's significant contributions to advancing social justice. The University of Michigan's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Symposium is one of the most extensive recognitions and celebrations of Dr. King in higher education in the nation. So please take advantage of many of these engaging and educational opportunities and events as possible. You can find further information in your program and on the MLK Symposium website. Next, President Ono was to provide greetings, but unfortunately, due to illness, he will not be with us today. We wish him a speedy recovery. In his absence, I would like to recognize his roles in the fight for social justice as a higher education leader. From his efforts to support mental health access and eliminate cultural stigmas, to his reparative and reconciliation work with university and indigenous communities. He has been honored for his contributions, for instance, as a recipient of the Reginald Wilson Diversity Leadership Award from the American Council of Education. And as he entered U of M as its 15th president this past October, President Ono immediately affirmed his commitment to social justice and the ideals of Dr. King, as evidenced, for instance, by his support for new innovations, such as the Inclusive History Project, investing in banks that support minority-owned businesses and that support underserved communities, as well as his partnership with our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion as our campus community comes together to begin to move our DEI 1.0 strategic plan efforts into a new 2.0 phase for even greater impact. Provost Lori McCauley has graciously agreed to fill in for President Ono, and I have the honor of her introduction. Dr. Lori McCauley joined the university as an assistant professor of dentistry in 1992. I was going to go through her whole resume, but in her humility, I'm going to only highlight the fact that she has 4 degrees from The Ohio State University, which means that U of M truly is inclusive in the ways that we embrace those from all backgrounds. Dr. McCauley served as the dean of the School of Dentistry prior to her role as provost, and is currently the William K. and Mary Ann Najjar Professor of Pathology in the School of Dentistry and Professor of Pathology in the Medical School. As provost, Dr. McCauley oversees the academic and budgetary affairs of the university, working closely with our academic unit leaders and executive officers to ensure that our programs have the financial, leadership, and partnership that support and maintain excellence, encourage innovation, and enhance student success. Across all areas of this core mission, her leadership approach infuses the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's been a pleasure working with her team since I took on my role in August to work together to advance these values. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Lori McCauley.
Thank you, Tabby, for that kind and a bit lively introduction. And thank you so much for the amazing work that you're doing in our Office for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I'd also like to express my gratitude to all of you who have joined us for making the U of M's Martin Luther King Jr. Symposium one of the nation's largest celebrations of the life and legacy of Dr. King. I'm also thankful that for the first time in some time, we're gathered together in person this year. It's so important for us to see so many of us committed to the strengthening and reimagining the unfinished work of Dr. King here at the University of Michigan, across our state, and throughout our nation. I'd especially like to thank those of you who have made today's celebration possible, including our Symposium Planning Committee, our Office of Academic Multicultural Initiatives, and our collaborators in the Stephen M. Ross School of Business and the Stephen M. Ross Athletic Campus, as well as our distinguished panelists and speakers, including Dr. Aletha Maybank, Mr. Jalen Rose, Mr. Edward Buckles, and Dr. Earl Lewis. I'd also like to acknowledge our musical performers and artists, Dr. Stephen Rush, Scott Piper, and Daniel Washington, all faculty from the School of Music, Theater, and Dance, and Julian Goods, former SMTD student, and the Voices of Distinction from the Detroit School of Arts. Finally, I'd like to thank all of you who will be hosting the many events that we have over the next few weeks to further the message of this symposium and our renewed commitment to the living legacy of Dr. King. Perhaps the most important point I can make today is that Dr. King's legacy lives in all of us. It is our responsibility to choose as individuals, as well as together as a university, what we will do with that legacy, not just today, but each day every day, each week, each year? Will we treat each person with respect and dignity? Will we strive to listen and serve with compassion and humility? Will we work together to build a more equitable, just, and inclusive community? At the University of Michigan, our dedication to academic excellence is deeply intertwined with our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We cannot be excellent without being diverse in the broadest sense. That is why I was so pleased to see the results of our DEI 1.0 strategic plan initiative that we announced last week. The evaluation made it clear, and I must thank Tabby and her team again for the outstanding work. We've made much progress, even though there's still more to do. The report and the conversation with President Ono about it is online if you weren't able to be with us, and I encourage you to take a look. And I'd like to highlight a couple of examples from it. We've established the Wolverine Pathways to reduce the barriers to college and career opportunities to students from under-resourced communities. And just as importantly, this empowers them and their families to dream bigger dreams. Wolverine Pathways also follows the advice of Malcolm X, who famously said, "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." Today, we have more than 560 active scholars in our Pathways program. Nearly 500 scholars have graduated from the program, and 81% of them have enrolled in or graduated from college, including 60 here at U of M Dearborn and 212 here in Ann Arbor. Thank you. As a sign of our lasting commitment to these efforts, we now have more than 100 DEI leads on the University of Michigan campus. DEI leads are charged with ensuring that each of our schools and colleges and units are fulfilling our goal of imbuing DEI across the university. In addition, 100% of our schools and colleges consider DEI in the faculty review process, and 27 of our senior faculty have been recognized for their work in the field. We're also making strides in increasing accessibility and in strengthening affordability and socioeconomic diversity at Michigan. We're showing significant increases in minoritized representation among our students, faculty, and staff, and our campus climate has improved significantly for less privileged members of our community. Yet, there's so much more to do. Our report also makes that clear. As long as a single student feels the sting of hate, as long as a single member of our faculty fears discrimination, and as long as a single person on our staff feels the pain of injustice, our work will not be done. The revolution, the evolution must continue. It lies in all of us to do so. So let us stay true to our best traditions and true to the dreams of Dr. King. You are now about to witness the premiere of Black Pilgrims, created by Stephen Rush and portrayed eloquently by Scott Piper and Danielle Washington, 3 renowned faculty members in the School of Music, Theater, and Dance. The creator and performers of this hip-hop opera will take us on a pilgrimage with Martin and Malcolm, 2 civil rights fighters with different perspectives, and witness how their perspectives of otherness beyond the United States impacted their personal views of racism in the United States. I now present to you Stephen Rush, the creator of Black Pilgrims. Thank you again.
Greetings, my dear brothers and sisters. I'm deeply honored to be here today and to present this thing that I created. I want to briefly introduce my contribution to today's festivities by saying that the part of Malcolm X is being sung by Daniel Washington. That's right. And the part of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King is being sung by my colleague, Scott Piper. Yeah. These guys are monsters in their field. They're really amazing. By the way, Malcolm speaks first in this piece. This piece is a presentation of a possible conversation between Malcolm and Martin, and a guess on my own part that Malcolm and Martin would have come to terms had fate not gotten in the way. And this piece is also very personal. I've gone to India myself 15 times, and Dr. King, when in India, saw a different kind of systemic oppression, and it rung a bell for him. It seemed way too familiar. And Malcolm saw the opposite in Mecca. He saw whites and browns and blacks eating side by side in peace and under the umbrella that God loved them all. It was no longer us and them. My own experience in India, of course, is the flip-flop of Dr. King's. Up until 1947, it was a slave state. And I looked like the people that held them hostage, and that's not good for me. And it's not good for them. And what I did with this piece, well, I took the words of Dr. King and Malcolm directly from YouTube interviews, not them speaking to each other, but interviews, and wrote down the words very carefully as notes, rhythms, and melodies. And what you will hear in this piece is the actual words of Martin and Malcolm exactly as they spoke to them, incantillating with the pitches and the contour, and the key, it provides keys for the string quartet and the hip-hop groove that accompanies. The hip-hop groove is not mine. Nobody wants to hear an old white guy make hip-hop beats. It's Ethan Matt. Ethan Matt is a student here. He went on back to New York, where he's from. And both of my kids had a piece in this project. My daughter, Ruth Emma, said, "Dad, make it personal." And I thought, wow, that's a big ask, but I did. And it's pretty hard for me to talk about Dr. King in India without it being a little bit personal for me, and she was right. And my son said, "Make sure you give Jalen Rose mad props for his pod." So, Jalen, that's your advertisement. Thank me later. But I really do hope you enjoy this piece more than anything else, and I'm not sure whether this approach makes sense or that my opinions hold, but I do hope this piece brings voice to two beautiful human beings, both who were eliminated by society way too early in the first 10 years of my own life. And again, Malcolm speaks first. And my apologies to the signers, because I know you didn't have this. Thank you.
convinced than ever before that the method of non-violent resistance is the most potent weapon available to oppressed people in their struggle for justice and human dignity.
Will ever make me forget the conditions of our people in this country.
Today, we no longer have a choice between violence and non-violence.
And I was asking myself, what is the difference between these people and those that I left in America?
And if this age is to survive, it must follow the way of love and non-violence that is so nobly illustrated in his life.
Something is different, and it was their attitude.
I started thinking about the fact that my little children were still judged by the basis of the color of their skin rather than the content of their character.
No religion will make me forget the police clubs that come upside our heads.
And at that point, I became deeply influenced by Gandhi, never realizing that I would be living in a situation where it would be useful and meaning.
By accepting the oneness of God, they regarded all people, all persons, part of the human family.
And I had to say to myself, I am an untouchable. And every Negro in the United States is an untouchable.
Why to them didn't mean the same thing as it means in America. They didn't judge them by the color of their skin.
Segregation is evil and sinful because it stigmatizes as segregated and untouchable in a caste system.
Or leaders in any way, as long as it's designed to get genuine results.
Organized or non-violent resistance is is the most powerful weapon that oppressed people can use in breaking our lives from the bondage of oppression.
It's the only place where I've ever seen brotherhood practiced by people of all races.
Nonviolent resistance does resist, is dynamically active, and it is passive physically, but it is strongly active.
Definitely I went because of my religious beliefs, and I think that I have a better understanding of my religion. Have a better understanding of my religion. Have a better understanding of my religion. Of my religion. Of my religion.
Please let's have another round of applause for Stephen Rush, Scott Piper, and Daniel Washington. Whew. I thank our faculty for their commitment to educate the greater community through the arts and humanities, and for sharing their talents to bring greater insight into how Dr. King's travels expanded his vision, contributed to his learning, and revolutionized and evolutionized his positions on civil rights. The celebration of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday allows us, too, to focus on learning and expansion. Each year, an undergraduate student engages with the MLK Symposium planning team to enrich the exploration of Dr. King's legacy and the greater civil rights movement. I would like to introduce Sharonda Shiangong, the 2023 MLK Planning Committee student intern. Sharonda is a senior in our College of LS&A. She's majoring in international studies and minoring in music. With a passion for infectious disease epidemiology, it's a mouthful, she's interested in learning how and why different socioeconomic statuses affect the spread of diseases within communities. She's currently a diversity peer educator for Mosher Jordan Residence Hall and modeling chair for the African Students Association. Continuing her commitment to social justice, this year Sharonda is a second-year intern for the MLK Symposium. Thank you and welcome, Sharonda.
Thank you, Dr. Chavis. Good morning. I have the honor of presenting 4 distinguished individuals whose education, careers, and services demonstrate their response to Dr. King's call for our society to seek solutions to the cultural, economic, and governmental root causes of racism and social inequities. Dr. Aletha Maybank is the Chief Health Equity Officer and Senior Vice President of the American Medical Association. Dr. Maybank was instrumental in infusing equity at the neighborhood level and advancing the department's place-based approach to addressing health inequities. Dr. Maybank has taught medical and public health students about health inequities, public health leadership and management, physician advocacy, and community organizing in health. In 2012, along with a group of Black women physician leaders, Dr. Maybank co-founded We Are Doc McStuffins, a movement inspired by the Disney Junior character, Doc McStuffins, serving to shine a light on the critical importance of diversity in medicine. Mr. Edward Buckles, first-time director and Best New Documentary Director, winner of the Albert Macy's Award for the documentary Katrina Babies, heard and responded to Dr. King's call. As a groundbreaking filmmaker, director, and producer, Mr. Buckles continues to find inspiration and innovative ways to share the stories of Black communities that will otherwise be lost in the passing of time. Mr. Buckles was only 13 when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. His family fled the city just in time, but the storm changed him forever. After years spent as an educator and filmmaker, Buckles decided to make a film about the children, including himself, who were affected by the storm. Katrina Baby serves as a testimony of the economic injustices in our nations. Mr. Jalen Rose, sports analyst, author, documentary producer, philanthropist, former basketball star for the University of Michigan, and former NBA player. Mr. Rose heard and responded to Dr. King's call. In 2011, he demonstrated his commitment to education and founded and established the Jalen Rose Leadership Academy, an open enrollment, tuition-free public charter high school on the northwest side of Detroit. 100% of the inaugural class of 2015 gained college, trade or technical school, or military acceptance. The Academy currently serves over 400 9th through 12th grade students. In 2016, Mr. Rose was awarded the 11th Annual National Civil Rights Museum Sports Legacy Award for his significant contributions to civil and human rights and for laying the foundation for future leaders through his career in sports in the spirit of Dr. King. Our three speakers, Dr. Maybank, Mr. Buckles, and Mr. Rose, will speak in succession and will then assemble together in a moderated discussion. Thank you.
Good morning, University of Michigan. It is so awesome to be here. It's such a pleasure. This is the first thing and speaking gig I have for the new year, and it's really an honor to be in this space, to be able to talk about, speak about, celebrate, acknowledge Martin Luther King Jr. for his efforts and for his leadership, especially in the space of health. I want to first thank Sharonda for the wonderful introduction, the team at the Office of Academic Multicultural Affairs for the invitation. It is an honor again to be part of this symposium, and I'm really thankful for University of Michigan for your commitment in this space and honoring his legacy. Congrats to you all for being here for the first time in several years. I'm very familiar, if folks don't know, I don't know if that was announced, but I'm a pediatrician, I'm a preventive medicine doctor. My life has been pretty busy for the last couple of years dealing with COVID. And I know all of us have dealt with COVID in many different ways, so really congratulations to be able to come back in space and be in proximity with one another. We understand proximity, I think now, is a privilege as well as a blessing. And also just wanted to acknowledge, I have lots of friends who have come to this and gone to this university, so shout out, go blue. It is not what I typically say when I'm around them, but I'm gonna say go blue. And also want to acknowledge, I've done some work with the Detroit Public Health Department and just for their leadership, and Michigan Public Health Department too, during this particular time. And it's an honor to share the space with Ed Buckles, Dr. Lewis, and Jalen Rose for this. So we had a wonderful land acknowledgement already, so I'm not going to go too much in depth, but I think from a health perspective and a context of the work that we do, and justice work, it's always critical that we are centering, honoring the voices who have been marginalized and have been colonized for centuries and still are to this day. And so we want to make sure we acknowledge those indigenous peoples and the lands that were stolen, as well as their resilience, as well as the extraction of brilliance and energy and life for forced labor upon people of African descent for over 400 years. And we carry the ancestors in us, and we are continually called to do better in this work. So often, it's not mentioned really about the work and the leadership that Dr. Martin Luther King has done as it relates to health and his advocacy in health, but I will say that his organizing really created some of the most significant contributions and impacts, not only to the healthcare system experience, but really just overall health in this country, and not just for Black people, but for all people in this country. So this cup here is one that, and we all have our mug, that we drink out of every single day, and this is mine. This is what it says, that all policy is health policy. And I think this is the one thing that really sums up his leadership, in that he clearly and brilliantly understood and advocated for, strategically organized around, that health policy and that all policy is health policy. And he didn't have much data back then. We have a lot of data to really show us now of the impacts of housing, good housing, quality housing, our jobs, our income, the wealth that we have, where we live, our neighborhoods and transportation completely impact the health that we are able to obtain as individuals and communities. And he also understood that these conditions were created through and by structures and laws and policies. And the lenses that created those laws and policies were also created by lenses of systems of power and oppression, such as racism and all the other isms that we know. And these systems that offered advantage to whites and disadvantage to whites and other people of color, as well as the context and the lens of white supremacy. And when I say white supremacy, I mean the false notion and the myth of the hierarchy of human value based on skin color, with white being on top. He knew these systems were natural, that they were produced, they caused harm and early suffering and death for Black people. And at that time in 1960, the life expectancy for whites was about 70.6, for Blacks it was 63.6, so a 13-year difference in life expectancy in the 1960s. And this kind of knowledge and this rooting, and this radical rooting, honestly, in understanding health surpassed much of medicine at that time. And I would say it's not really until about now that medicine is really starting to catch up with this broader lens and this narrative around what creates health. And also shifting away from pathologizing Blackness and race and color, and understanding that race is a social construct and not a biological construct. This is one of his early writings where it really demonstrated his positioning around health and his advocacy in health. This was published in The Nation. John F. K. just became president at the time, and he had a few recommendations for him, a couple pages long actually, and you can find it in the archives of this article. And really in this article, he was elevating that the federal government had put forward legislation, had passed legislation, funds were going to states for construction of hospitals. And these hospitals and the funding was also providing programs around mental health and child care services. But what was really clear and what he was very frustrated about was that in the South, even though those funds should really go to all hospitals, they were not. And there was a separate but equal, probably unequal, and a flat-out denying of care for Black people. He felt the president should do much, much more and actually stop grants from going to these places in the states that were not ensuring desegregated health care and were stopping to deny the care of Black patients. So in addition to the gap that I just mentioned in terms of that was called the Hill-Burton Act, he also noticed that Black physicians at the time were often excluded from gaining privileges to work in white hospitals. And this resulted in a separate system, Black hospitals, Black med schools, all of that at the time. And this was in large part because of the American Medical Association, which was founded in 1847, the association that I work for in the organization now. And it was considered really, and still is, the most powerful politically and financial healthcare organization representing physicians. And so what happened at that time is that in order to get hospital privileges, you actually had to be a member of AMA. But AMA had exclusion policies, or actually didn't prevent associations or local affiliates from excluding Black physicians. So if Black physicians couldn't get membership into the AMA, they couldn't get hospital privileges into white hospitals, which meant they could work at Black hospitals, but it means that they had limited access to be able to provide care for patients, but also to be able to train. And that was a big problem, concerned him greatly. And so ending the discrimination of denying access for patients, and also what was happening for physicians, was a core thrust to King's political strategy. And so the picture on the left, after lots of years of advocating and advocacy, is the signing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And the key part of that legislation was Title VI of 1964. And this was the part of the provision that said, no person in the United States shall, on the ground of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation, be denied the benefits, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. And so, when we look at this, and now looking kind of on the right, I think it's important to note that King wasn't alone in his advocacy, but he definitely was working in partnership with the National Medical Association that was created because Black physicians were excluded from the AMA. So that was the Association of Black Physicians. And then also there were lots of other physicians that were advocating during that time to help support civil rights. AMA, the American Medical Association, was very much outside of the loop, and actually looking back at AMA records, you really almost can't find any mention of civil rights at all in their work. It's either ignored, and actually they try to obstruct the progress of civil rights during that time. And so the Medical Committee for Human Rights organized in the summer of and fall of 1964, after the civil rights legislation was passed, because they also felt that even with that legislation passed, the South still was not complying with these laws. And so they began to picket at AMA, feeling that they were not doing enough. They did it in 1963, 1965, 66, and 68. The other critical thing that was happening at that time is that President Johnson, wanted to enact a health program that all of us have heard of called Medicare for seniors. And the AMA resisted over and over again for a national health insurance program, thinking and saying that it was socialism. Thankfully, the National Medical Association and the leadership specifically of Dr. Montague Cobb, who was part of the leadership also in NAACP, along with Lyndon Johnson and King, strategically were able to, on January 30th, 1965, sign into law the Social Security Act, which created Medicaid and Medicare. And this brought federal funding into every single hospital medical institution in the country. And that, along with the Civil Rights Act, ensured equal access to every single health and medical institution. This was the moment in which hospitals across the country were desegregated in this country. And I think, yes. And that's Dr. Cobb there in the picture. And I think the other really interesting note is that AMA was not invited to the signing. Only Dr. Cobb was, as is understood. And so, even in the passing now, we now have Title VI, we have Medicare and Medicaid, the Social Security Act is now passed, but the South still is resisting some. And so King, again, with partnership with the Medical Civil Rights Committee on Human Rights, did some organizing again. And so in Chicago, so this quote that is like used over and over again, and sometimes it's in many different types of ways and variations. I think this is the one that's closest to what was most original, but this was the moment that he actually gave the speech in this conversation. It's not even a recorded speech. It was a newspaper article that really quoted him, in which we're able to find this quote. But he felt the government, again, wasn't doing enough, and that AMA was not taking the needed steps that needed to be taken. And so it was during this press conference in 1966 that this was here. But I think, again, the key takeaway really at this moment is that for everyone who's over 65, no matter your identity, your background in this audience, your family member or friend, you have health care via Medicare due to the advocacy of Dr. King, the National Medical Association, Black physicians, and the Medical Committee for Human Rights. And the film on the left, yes, that's right. And the film on the left, if you ever get a chance to check it out, tells a beautiful story of the whole time, and it's narrated by Danny Glover. Okay, so AMA. Then folks, typically question, why am I at the AMA with this racist history in their practices and their policies? And so I'd be remiss not to talk about that. Just, a little bit about me in terms of, I'm a daughter of an Antiguan, an immigrant family. I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I like water and dancing, and I'm saying these things for a particular reason because I think understanding my humanity allows you to better understand my why and why I'm here and doing this work. I have lots of expertise in terms of organizational change work and management and disrupting dominant narratives that tend to be very harmful to our community. And I operate out of a sense of love for myself, my family, my community, and my ancestors. And I fully believe in inside-outside strategies, covert and overt strategies in order to create change for social justice. So I've been an inside kind of strategist within institutions. And I was an NMA member well before I was an AMA member before I started this job. And so I came to the AMA knowing that they had a structural commitment. It was in their policy for the Center for Health Equity. It was an opportunity to leverage AMA for racial justice at a national level, and I'd be working on behalf of physicians, and that was a tremendous opportunity for me. And so the work that we have been able to lead is one, laying out the strategic plan to embed racial justice and advance health equity. And you can imagine how long and hard it took to get that particular title, let alone be able to issue this 80-page document, which is very long for a strategic plan, but we needed to provide some education in it. But the core part of the work that I do and the belief is that we as institutions can't change people unless we start to focus on ourselves. We get our own houses in order first, or alongside the work that we're doing external to the institution. So that's a core part of the work that I'm doing. Another part that I think is absolutely essential is that I don't think any institution can really have commitments to anti-racism without doing an honest assessment of their own institution's practices. You've already heard the harms, and some of the harms actually from AMA, and they're here on this sheet. One of the ones that I didn't elevate is number 4. AMA actually commissioned a report in the early 1900s. The result of that report actually closed 5 of the 7 med schools, black med schools, let me be clear, at that time, which can imagine has tremendous impact on the amount of black physicians within this country. And there, we list a lot of the harms within the document. We have issued an apology, this was before my time in 2008, to the National Medical Association for the exclusion and really for the harm, and then we made a commitment to do better and to do more. Within my time, the CEO of AMA, my boss, read an article that he hadn't read before, and when he realized that the father of AMA had such a direct connection to the exclusion of black physicians, there was a whole kind of exhibit on one of the floors. He removed his bust and the whole exhibit and moved it to the archives. And they also stripped awards in AMA of his name as well. That's huge for an institution of which is founded to even do that or to consider that, but it's possible. The next part of the work is the restorative justice work. Thanks to our young physicians and really to Gen Zers and millennials, y'all are awesome, y'all are courageous. And I would imagine of his time, that was the same thing. They were in their 20s and 30s, they were young, y'all got the energy, y'all have the courage in ways that the older generations don't. And I just want y'all to kind of stick to who you are. We need you at this moment to keep pushing forward. But thankful to our med student sections and our young physician sections that these policies were passed. It really was quite shocking to many people that we passed these policies at the AMA, but they moved forward with them, thankfully. Also, a policy on officially and formally recognizing the harm of the Flexner report that I just told you about, acknowledging that voting is a social determinant of health. Also, very much aligned with our historical context of structural racism in this country. And then lastly, well, it's not lastly, but one of the other things is that we also established, and we're going to be establishing a task force to look at restorative justice and truth, reconciliation, and healing for our past as AMA. So I feel that we're in this time of revolution. I think it's clear around health. COVID has helped us do that. We see that in technology. We see that in virtual medicine. And then I would also say we're in this time of renaissance for health equity. And this quote I think is very appropriate for today. We probably would add materialism when I think about climate change also. and that as an opposing force that we have to figure out how to overcome. The reality is within this renaissance, prior to February 2020, it was barely talked about in terms of racism. People were afraid to say the word racism. People still are afraid to say the word racism. But really, within the context of health institutions, COVID comes along, then we start to see on news, and people are talking about health equity, and they had never used those terms. My mother was like, "Oh, I know what you do now." I heard it on the news. I was like, this is a relief, because she believes that I'm not really a doctor because I don't practice medicine, so at least she gets something. The public murder of George Floyd propelled our country in many different sectors, across many different sectors, to make declarations around racism as a public health issue. The work of the Black Lives Matter movement, not even after, they were working well before the public murder of George Floyd, so I want to acknowledge that. But that is also very critical to the contributions, I think, of this revolutionary time and renaissance. The pledges that I said were already made, lots of doctors from the health space now, where we were taught in my generation, you can't be political, doctors aren't to be political, you're not to protest, and now we see more advocacy amongst physicians and healthcare workers overall, more so than ever. And then we have these places where folks are, creating more tools and content for our health workers around anti-racist agendas for medicine, and it's getting published in these public places. And then this is a guide that we put forward at the American Medical Association along with AAMC on really to help support physicians really disrupt again those narratives that they have in their head in the system that doesn't allow us to advance health equity. And I think, at this moment, we're going to look 20 years back from now, reflect on what has changed in our health and our systems, but the question for now is, what kind of change do you want to usher in and to be a part of individually and collectively? And how will you account for your time? Just quickly, as I start to finish up, I think for me, making injustice visible. He said this in one of his last sermons, this particular picture on the far bottom right-hand side is a statue that was in Central Park. I was there that day. It was removal of another former president of AMA, J. Marion Sims, who was considered the father of gynecology, who performed procedures on enslaved women without anesthesia. It's well documented because he wrote it in his own autobiography. And Michelle Browder, who's an artist in Montgomery, put up this beautiful work of art to honor Betsy Lucien and ARCA. And I really feel that our cultural strategists, our artists, our filmmakers, you're gonna hear from Mr. Buckley soon, our writers and our social media influencers, like really using their gifts, but also connecting with health leaders and health justice leaders to really become like profound to make these connections. We have technology. On the right-hand side is one of my mentees, is a student who, some of you may be following him, but he's been telling these wonderful stories and important stories about health justice, and we have Tanya Lee Lewis also, who has done a film lately. And then disrupting norms, I think, and rescuing our narratives is going to be absolutely critical. In medicine, it is very rare in anybody who's in healthcare, and you don't see images of black skin, black bodies, period, barely. And so we have, young leaders, again, starting to create and disrupt this space, that these images are important for us to see. This is not something that would have been in my med school book, that's for sure. And then reparations. We're starting to see a movement, and we're kind of building onto a movement that is talking explicitly about reparations, but now even medicine. I had the honor and privilege to be a co-author on one of the early papers that's listed here at the top. And these papers are really starting to understand and highlight, and they're very this is the infancy in doing that, so they're not perfect, but they're important and critical at this time. And looking at the decrease in disease, but also increased life expectancy kind of over time, we're noticing. So Martin Luther King said, "In America made no progress in their attempt to cure the body politic of disease of race." And I think we have had progress. We still have much more progress, and much of his advocacy was around segregation in healthcare. But the reality, and this was just published this month by the Journal of Ethics at the American Medical Association, is that we're still in a very segregated healthcare system. It's illegal, but we're still in a very segregated system. The life expectancy now, the gap is not 13 years between black and white, and it's 5 years. And I guess progress is that, universities allow me to come to speak about MLK, and the AMA is able to show up and have conversation and voice in these spaces. But the backlash is real, and I think he noted this, that it's obvious outright resistance among whites, this is his language, to limit the powers of people for progress. And as soon as you start to challenge any kind of narrative, this is when the resistance comes. And so some of the anti-racist medicine article that I showed, neo-Nazis showed up at Brigham Women's, this was this past year. And then there are a lot of doctors such as myself that have been facing threats and harassment. And I had somebody come up to my door and write die B on the door. And so the backlash is something real. And so as I move forward, 2021, hold on, I gotta take a sip here. Sorry. 2021 was my hardest year at AMA and probably working ever, with the threats, having to have security detail, managing up and across an institution. I actually joined and started to get music therapy because I like music. And I remember my therapist saying to me, Aletha, because I probably came in feeling stressed and looking stressed and unrelaxed. And he said, Aletha, remember our ancestors were not only fighting for our justice and freedom, they were fighting for our joy, so go out and find it. I think this is a critical part of the revolution at this time and our resistance at this time, as well as the Renaissance. And I don't think, I've said about, the health equity Renaissance, I don't think it's a coincidence that, B is Beyonce B, has an album out called Renaissance. And I think it's, again, that cultural strategist. And I think it's brilliant because it's about joy, it's about showing up as self, it's about dance. And I think this ability to be in alignment with culture in that way, be able to show up as you are, whomever you are, is critical for us, especially as black and brown people. And then this year, my shift has really been, and I think our ancestors were not only fighting for our joy and our justice, but they were fighting for our rest. They wanted rest. All of us want rest. And this is where I do think there is some difference in King's. Now, he probably wanted rest. And I get the idea because it's been like my thinking for the last years, probably in all that I've done this work over the 15 years. These windows of opportunity are not always open. So you feel like you have to just rush through as fast as you can to get done what you can. But it's exhausting, and many of you know this. And so rest as a form of resistance is named that because it pushes back against the grind and the exploitation of capitalism and white supremacy, again, the false notion of a hierarchy of human value based on skin color. So we're all yearning for rest, collective rest. We deserve rest. We have a right to rest. And this is my commitment to my team for this year in 2023. We're creating individual and collective rest plans. So I just want to end in saying happy birthday to Dr. Martin Luther King, and I wish you all love, joy, and rest as we continue to move through his legacy and fight for freedom. So thank you for your ears, your hearts, your minds. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Good morning. Y'all look good, wow. I am honored to be here in the footsteps of Dr. King on this beautiful campus, so thank you for having me. Dr. Martin Luther King had the audacity to hold up a mirror to this nation and not only show us what we were, but what we could be. He was strategic in holding the country to a standard of which it never proved to be, but certainly claimed to be, as promised in the Constitution that in practice consistently excludes Black Americans and marginalized groups alike. He indicted racism, anti-Blackness, both on the surface and at the root, acknowledging the conditions that birthed these evils and radically, yes, radically, organizing towards our collective freedoms. To maintain a nonviolent approach in a violent society, uphold personal values where immorality is the standard, and dedicate your life to a cause that not all had yet believed in, speaks to the character of a man and the legacy of a movement, not just a moment. My name is Edward Buckles Jr., filmmaker and director of HBO original documentary Katrina Babies, and I am able to stand here today because of the life and the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Growing up in New Orleans and learning about Dr. King in school, what I always remembered was the emphasis on his tactic of nonviolence and Dr. King as the most visible symbol of Black history. I learned about the marches, the boycotts, and of course, his I Have a Dream speech and leadership in the passing of the Civil Rights Act. Simultaneously, I was learning about various Black leaders such as Malcolm X and the infamous contrasts and comparisons made between the two. To some, Martin spoke to respectability and peace, while Malcolm spoke to the impatience and militance of younger Black generations. In media portrayals and even in my school teachings, Martin was misrepresented as passive and the one that we should be more like, who was nicer to white people, whereas Malcolm X was deemed as problematic and violent. The reality is that both of these revolutionary Black men were necessary, and their legacies both had a common goal: freedom from the ills of society and justice for their people. It's important to correct and reclaim King's true legacy from the recollection of his dream to the realization of his nightmare. In 1967, Dr. King expressed, "I must confess that the dream that I had that day in many points has turned into a nightmare." He emphasized the need to confront the root cause of hate, evil, and racism, and how in order to do so, it will cost the nation something that many will be resistant to. It was the cost of freedom. Dr. King taught me the ways in which real change comes at a cost, and how we can only change our realities if we begin to examine their origins. In 2014, I began what would become a 7-year journey for my directorial debut, Katrina Babies, a documentary offering an intimate look at the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and its impact on the youth of New Orleans. Bearing witness to post-Katrina New Orleans equipped me with the research and development necessary to make this film. I noticed the changing of Black neighborhoods through gentrification and the rise of young Black people being impacted and involved in the rising violence in the city. What troubled me the most was the dehumanizing ways that the media and most adults were blaming the youth for the trouble that they were getting into. And the cause always felt like it was something much, much more deeper than me. So when I became a high school teacher in 2015, I started to make the connections between students' behavioral problems and the unspoken trauma that they were carrying. Many would act out by fighting, being of disturbance, or not focusing in class, skipping class, and having an overall resistance towards authority. I never thought that my students were just bad. Through research and understanding their experiences, because I had to experience them, I realized that it was PTSD, which can also show up as fight or flight, the body's response to what it perceives as a threat to survival. This completely changed the way I interacted with my students, because I then realized that I needed to approach teaching using a trauma lens. The Institute of Women and Ethnic Studies in New Orleans once expressed, "The youth of New Orleans are sad, not bad." The youth of New Orleans are sad, not bad. And that spoke directly to me. This forced me to also look at my own age group and really unpack the ways that unaddressed trauma was showing up in our lives. In addition to the traumas we've carried by just being black in New Orleans and black in America, our collective trauma was Hurricane Katrina. No one had ever asked us how we were doing or how this storm had impacted us, so I did. My approach was filmmaking. I used my camera as a tool and a weapon to elevate the long-form, forgotten voices of the storm through the best way I knew how, my art. Now, I know that last line sounded real sophisticated, but let's have a moment of transparency. Let's have a moment of transparency. I had no clue what I was doing. I was a first-year film student, and, but I didn't know anything about making a feature-length film, but I knew that I had to get this story told. This process has been one of the most challenging in my life, having to unpack emotions I didn't know I had, digging through archival footage that showed my entire community underwater and fighting for their lives, home videos of family dynamics that are no longer, and navigating research of this disaster and nearly 100 interviews detailing various traumas. It eventually forced me to look inward into my own life and unearth the Katrina story I didn't even realize I had. As a 13-year-old, I assumed Hurricane Katrina to be just like any other hurricane. You see, we're used to storms where I'm from. For most of my lifetime, we didn't even have to take them seriously. A hurricane in the Gulf basically just meant you stay home from school or that your neighborhood was having a hurricane party. I'm from New Orleans, so that meant music, food, the whole nine. I thought in 2005 that it was just bad luck that must have landed us New Orleans folks stuck in our attics and on our roofs for days, dead in the street and displaced from our homes. It wasn't until long days went by in a shelter hours away that we began to wonder what was next for us and our family who had stayed behind. The news was showing my city in a way that I had never seen before. Those who were pleading for help from their roofs, bodies both dead and alive left in the hot streets under inhumane circumstances, and the stereotype of who was considered a looter when they was just looking for food, all happened to be black people. As I looked around the shelter, it was all black people around me, sitting on the hard floors trying to pick up the pieces of their lives that was just washed away. If I hadn't known what racism looked like before, I definitely knew then. Now, I've heard people deny this by saying, so what are you saying, a hurricane was racist? Why you gotta bring color into this? Well, the reality is that hurricanes and other disasters only exacerbate the inequalities that already exist. As Dr. King once said, we must see now that the evils of racism, economic exploitation, and militarism are all tied together. And you can't get rid of one without getting rid of the other. Like black and marginalized communities across the country, Black New Orleans has been disproportionately impacted by poverty, unlivable wages, trauma, environmental racism, lack of access to quality service and healthy foods. Should I go on? Race and equality long determined who was even able to evacuate during Hurricane Katrina. If you were part of a percentage that lived below the poverty line, being able to evacuate was based on whether or not you even had transportation, could fill up your gas tank, book somewhere to lay your head for an extended period of time, stock up on food, or even have enough money to do any of the above when you live in paycheck to paycheck. Race and inequality determine who had guns drawn on them by armed guards or who was gunned down seeking for help. Race and equality determine a slow government response to a predominantly black city in need. Race and equality determine which children were simply asked, "Are you okay?" or which children were thrown away because of how their trauma surfaced. Race and equality determine the mass displacement of black communities post-Katrina and has destabilized the village that once raised a child. Dr. King said, "It is just as important to work passionately to get rid of the conditions that bring violence into being. Poverty, inequality, capitalism, and gentrification are all acts of violence. Poverty, inequality, capitalism, and gentrification are all acts of violence." They lead directly to the violence that we see on the ground. In the spirit of Dr. King's philosophy, Katrina Baby shines a light on the conditions that causes violence to be, because as he demonstrated throughout his work, in order to see a change in our communities, we must first eliminate the systemic hate, evil, and violence that breeds it. Thinking back to the great leaders that came before me reinforced the reason why this story was worth telling to begin with. Where would we be had Dr. King not taken the responsibilities he did under the immense pressure he was facing and the danger that he was facing? So in the way that he had the audacity to hold up a camera, So in the way that he had the audacity to hold up a mirror to this country, I can only hope that in holding up a camera to my city, that I can too stand here in the legacy of the man, the king, who showed us who we are and all of the possibilities of who we could be. Thank you.
Please give it up again for that young brother. He was dynamic. And I know I ain't gonna be as good, so I ain't gonna even try. I'm gonna just do me. When I learned about today's theme, the revolution of MLK, from segregation to elevation, I thought, how can I contribute? And then I decided, through education. And it was almost 70 years ago, and I want to quote and wish Martin Luther King Jr. a very happy birthday, as he once said, "It was not fortuitous that education became embroiled in this conflict. Education is one of the vital tools the Negro needs in order to advance, and yet it has been denied him by devices of segregation and manipulations with quality." So what does that mean to you? A little more history lesson. In 1954, Brown versus Board of Education, the United States Supreme Court overturned the 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson decision. The legal concept of separate but equal in public schools. This was a revolutionary, leading to the integration of our nation's public schools, providing a major catalyst for the civil rights movement, making possible advances in housing, public accommodations, and institutions of higher education. And by the way, these areas, though predominantly halted or reversed it by elected administrators, to this day have not been designated equal. Justice is an essential element of equality, and the struggle for justice, it continues. To this day, all students do not have access to a quality education, despite major strides towards educational equity. Our country still faces an opportunity gap. And education should not be defined by social economic background, abilities, or as I say, the quality of your education should not be defined by your zip code. And this inequity carries over into our public service employees, police, fire, hospital, supermarkets. That's the reason why in 2011, I started the Jalen Rose Leadership Academy. And like MLK, I wanted to be a drum major for justice, peace, and righteousness. And if you know me, and you really know me, I would never shut up and dribble. And what makes JRLA unique, we're not just a high school. We're a 9 through 16 model. So what does that mean? I wanted to influence the young people when they're most vulnerable. I feel the 8 most important years of a young person's life are the 4 that they're in high school and the 4 that they could be in college. You ask any adult where their dreams went awry, usually it's during that period. So now let's examine education in the United States of America. What high-paying job can you get with a high school diploma? Doesn't really exist anymore. So I decided I wanted to take it a step further. And a 9 through 16 model influences young people not only after they graduate from 12th grade, but while they're in secondary education. That's community college, 4-year college, military, trade school, pushing them in the pursuit of chasing their goals and their dreams. But I have a dirty secret for you. Usually when we meet them at 9th grade, they're not reading or doing math at a 9th grade level. So what does success look like? It ain't necessarily graduating from an Ivy League school. It's putting young people in position to change the family dynamics that they were raised in and put themselves in position to be a difference maker in their communities. Being functioning members of society, not just be judged by their test scores. And here's a sad but truth. Why do suburban public school students get more state funding than inner city public school students? That's called segregation. That's called racism. It does exist. Even if the laws have changed, it's become socio-economic. And we're here to bridge the education gap. And also, at an amazing institution like the University of Michigan that has been fundraising since the 1800s, there's a dynamic that plays in a predominantly white institution versus the funding for an HBCU. And these cold, hard facts have existed since the beginning of time. But I'm here to say the quiet thing out loud because it needs to be said on this glorious day that we celebrate the life and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I'm proud to stand on the shoulders of giants. I was also proud to be an honor roll student in high school. I made the dean's list at Michigan. And I graduated from college. So education has always been important to me. And a lot of times, I like to use this quote because life and circumstance and social media and so many things can come at you and it can kind of cloud your judgment or your thought process. So I like to remind myself as I'll remind you. I can't hear what you're saying because your actions are so loud. And so, as I stand before you as the founder of a tuition-free public charter high school in the zip code 48235 that I grew up in, I'll be brutally honest with you. It's like pulling teeth to fundraise for inner city students. I have one of the most high profiles of many Americans. I have the most popular name that exists. My mother created it. But when I'm trying to raise $10 million to expand our facility, crickets. When I'm trying to raise $10 million to expand our facility, crickets. So to everybody that can hear my voice, I can't hear what you're saying because your action's so loud. And when I first founded the school, I wanted to make sure that people didn't think like, oh, he's starting a basketball factory. He's trying to have a great team, right? So I actually initially took pride in the fact that I took over a middle school, converted it into a high school, but we still have a middle school gym. We call it a caffeinasium. You guys know what I'm talking about. However, 12 years later, it ain't funny no more because my basketball team has never played a home game. Think about it. I've been a basketball All-American. I played in the league. I've been working in the media for 20 years. My basketball team has never played a home game. So as we celebrate the life and legacy of the great, the legendary, the iconic Dr. Martin Luther King, I'm here to bridge the education gap. And like I always say, I want inner city public school students to get the same quality education as suburban private school students, to put each of them in position to compete for the same job, the same opportunities, so they can change their family dynamics forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Maybank, Mr. Buckles, and Mr. Rose, for sharing your unique efforts and commitments to elevate our marginalized and forgotten members in our society. At this time, we are excited to have our speakers assemble as a panel that will be moderated by Dr. Earl Lewis. Dr. Lewis is a noted social historian, award-winning author and educational leader, and the founding director of the University of Michigan Center for Social Solutions. He's also the Thomas C. Holt Distinguished University Professor of History, Afro-American African Studies, and Public Policy. Lewis is the President Emeritus of the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, one of the premier philanthropies supporting the arts, humanities, and higher education. At Michigan, Lewis and colleagues in the center are addressing 4 core areas of social concern: diversity and race, slavery and its aftermath, water insecurity, and the dignity of labor in an automated world. Please welcome Dr. Earl Lewis. At this time, we invite our keynote speakers, Dr. Maybank, Mr. Buckles, and Mr. Rose, to join Dr. Lewis for a panel discussion.
Well, welcome to this, the 2023 MLK Day Symposium panel. You've heard from our 3 speakers, and they were terrific, yes. And now it's time for a conversation. The late Vincent Harding, historian, theologian, king confidant, and social activist, once told me he hated the fact that so many people seem to want a king frozen in time. The beloved community king, the I have a dream king, the Prince of Peace king. He reminded me that king was a living, learning, evolving human being who preached love, yes, but who envisioned a world not yet built, who bristled at injustice, craved for an end to militarism, understood the power of education, yearned for better health outcomes for all, and knew the haunting elements of poverty. The king Harding favored was a strategist, a truth teller, and one not afraid of making others uncomfortable. We want to raise up that king on this day.
No doubt.
Let me remind the audience of the 3 quotes from King that frame today's conversation. The first, of all the forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhumane. Second, we must see now that the evils of racism, economic exploitation, and militarism are tied together. And you can't get rid of one without getting rid of the other. And the third, it was not fortuitous that education became embroiled in this conflict. Education is one of the vital tools the Negro needs in order to advance. And yet, it has been denied him by devices of segregation and manipulations with quality. Turning to today's panelists, it's so nice to be with you. I want to start with a general question or two, and then really shift and ask you individual questions to ask. So let's start. Many come to the work they do because of life experiences. That was true of Dr. King, a child of the segregated South. And I'm sure that it is true for you. What 3 factors in your lives have influenced the work you have undertaken? Aletha, I think I'll start with you.
Sure. Thanks, and good to be here again. Good to be in community on stage with you all. So, as I mentioned, I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So I would say, I'll say it summary-wise, but Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in the suburbs, in a predominantly white community, it's not a new story, but it is our experience, and that experience, I think, influences us. And I think King talked a lot about being maladjusted, and the importance of that in order to influence and inspire us to show up as leaders. And I think, for sure, that experience of growing up in that space absolutely did that. I experienced, because I did well in school, but I was usually the only in accelerated classes, et cetera, et cetera. And at the same time, the principal of the school and the high school did not want me to excel. And so he made it very clear. And he had my mom sign papers when I wanted to do accelerated classes, that if I failed, it wasn't the school's fault, even with showing good grades. I actually was in school suspension my last day of school of high school. I am not a bad student. I wasn't, however you want to term it, that's not the right way to say it, but I wasn't a student that was going to get anything. I got detention for chewing gum. I said chew gum now. That's the amount I got it for. But I got it because we had our first multicultural day. They asked if I'd be in charge of the African American table. I was excited because the school had never done anything like that. There was a paper on a table that I put, of course, that says racism still exists. I asked our secretary to copy it. She copied it, put it back on the table. I got called into the class the next day. And I went to school with skinheads. KKK skinheads live all in the community that I grew up in. And so I was called to the office, and the skinheads said to the principal, if they're not allowed to pass out their materials, why am I allowed to pass out ours? And so he felt the equitable thing to do was to give me in-school suspension. It was the last 3 days of high school. And so I still have the essay that I wrote. It created a big thing, but it was in that context that I realized and got the experience of what systems can do. If systems and people do not want you to get somewhere or to excel, and they have power financially, however that power is, they are going to use that power to use that. So I learned power. The other big part of it, though, throughout my growing up career was advocacy, and that was from my mom. And the importance of showing up for myself, but showing up for other people, even when it didn't seem right. And I think also in that context, it was my experience, and I'm going to shift to further down in my life, when I became a resident in medicine, and you do training as a pediatrician. And I was in New York City and Queens in a low wealth community per se, a disinvested historically community. And I loved going to that space, but what I realized is that I was becoming part of this kind of white supremacist institution, this racist institution, how I looked at my patients, blaming them for the context of how they were showing up, and not looking and understanding that where they live, as you said, the zip code earlier, really determines the choices that they have. So mothers will come in with good intention, even if their families and their children are obese, and they're not following through with the plan that I gave them. And I had to take a pause and really look at myself and kind of figure out, how am I showing up as a doctor? What is the narrative that I need to really embody about what this work is about? And I had to make a decision if I wanted to stay in medicine. And I actually didn't stay in practicing medicine because I was very turned off by medical culture. It didn't allow me to talk about the issues that impact people's health. And so that's why I transitioned to doing what I do.
Thank you. Jalen, how do you answer that question?
Thank you. Thank you.
So a couple of the factors.
The factors that contribute to the work you're doing.
I think the first one is growing up in poverty. And it's almost like living in a maze, so to speak, and trying to figure how am I going to get out of this hamster wheel. And one of my favorite rappers is the Notorious Big. And he said, either you sling crack rock or you got a wicked jump shot. That was the way out that people that look like me identified how we can find success. The get rich or die trying mentality. Live fast, die young. And I had a wicked jump shot, but I was like, it's gonna take a little bit more. And the one thing I enjoy about being an athlete that I think a lot of people underestimate is that we're also required to be students.
Exactly.
I think people underestimate that about an athlete. And so that means class is a requirement whether you want to do it or not.
Yep.
Or you can't play. Even if I don't want to go to school, can't play basketball if I'm not eligible. And there was a time when I was in middle school and I was a really good student, and I used to be the kind of student like, I'm gonna hurry up and finish my work, but then I'm gonna act silly the rest of the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I got in trouble and I got kicked out of school. And my mother took me off the basketball team. That killed me. Because I started to feel like, wait a minute, I don't ever want to be considered a dumb jock.
Yeah.
And so I was like, if I'm gonna go to school, I'm in Detroit, it's the middle of winter, it's cold outside. I might as well try to be as competitive at being a student as I am at sports. And what if I don't make it to the league? What else am I gonna fall back on? We, in our society, there was a period of time where you could graduate from high school. If you were from Detroit, you could get a job at the plant, work 40 hours. It was like your work ethic could put you in position to be successful. And so I was like, I'm gonna be educated, I'm gonna be an athlete, I'm gonna give myself as many chances as I can to break poverty. And the second answer to your question, and I'm gonna just be brutally honest with you, I felt like I could go against the system and try to break down racist barriers in the education system. But if I'm starting a school, even if you're racist, you can't block me. At least you can't say it out loud.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
And so I was like, I'm gonna start a school. And I remember going to all type of legislations. And by the way, if you ever want to start a school, it's more paperwork than the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
And we get zero state funding for our facility. It's not an encouraged route by any stretch of the imagination. And usually, when people not only want to help inner city kids or black kids, they do it when we're small. Why is that? Why do you rather help the K through 4th grader than the 9th through 12th grader? They're two different points of their lives. The young person still has parental involvement. Parents waking them up in the morning, disciplining them when they're doing bad. They haven't been exposed to the things that the 14, 15-year-old 9th grader has been exposed to. The ills of my community, poverty, sex, drugs, violence, gangs. And so I'm like, I'm gonna take the road less traveled. And I'm gonna influence the young people who are actually underserved, literally. And I independently started a high school, not through a network. Jalen Rose Leadership Academy.
Thank you. Edward, I'd love to hear how you answered that question.
Yeah, you know, I think that I would answer that question by first saying, I'm from New Orleans, I'm from the South, and we often get misrepresented. So just to add context, everything that I know, everything that that everybody loves about me in the film industry, in the education world, is because of the hood that I grew up in. I learned everything in the neighborhood that I grew up in. And, you know, in this film industry, it is dominated most of the time with stories that are extraordinary, right? Yeah. It's these stories that are, you know, chasing dinosaurs, you know? Yeah. And I didn't have access to all that. You know, I didn't have access to, you know, travel or access to, you know, that level of storytelling. But what I did have access to was my neighborhood and what I was learning in my neighborhood, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And when it came to being misrepresented, I always thought that my neighborhood and my city was beautiful, but I wouldn't always see that in the media. Yeah. So one of the main reasons that I even got into art and became an artist that wanted to tell stories about New Orleans was to change that narrative. When it comes to Hurricane Katrina, I'm pretty sure everybody here has, you know, heard of Hurricane Katrina, but I remember in 2005, you know, we were all over the news at our worst, you know, and we weren't telling our own stories. We weren't in control of the narrative of what really happened to us, you know, again, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think that it's dangerous when it's in other people's hands. So one of my biggest, you know, motivators is, you know, to take back, you know, like Sankofa, right? It's like to take back our narrative, you know, to take back our history, to take back our image. Because, like, we beautiful, you know? And, like, I feel like, you know, when people think about Hurricane Katrina, or, like, when people think about, you know, even New Orleans, they think about the Mardi Gras and the tourism and the second lines, but they don't think about the beautiful people that make the city what it is. So that's one of my biggest goals, and that's one of the biggest things that motivates me. Something else that motivated me was hope. You know, New Orleans is not in a place right now that most of us wanted to be in. You know, as of 2 months ago, we are now, you know, the murder capital of America. And it is young people both in front and behind the gun. And, you know, it's also being taken over by gentrification, which feeds directly into the violence, but don't nobody want to say that. And just growing up in New Orleans, growing up in a black city, you know, I grew up around black people, you know, all black people. And I love that. And after Katrina, when it's different, I hope to get back to that place. So that motivates my work as well. And, like, that's why I tell the stories that I do. I'm not sure if that was 3, but, you know. Yeah.
It's good. Thank you. King was working and preaching and writing in the 1950s and the 1960s. As you think back on that 5, 6 decades that have passed, what's the biggest difference in your view between the world in his times and the world in our times? Jillian, let's start with you.
I think during his time, segregation and racism was in your face. Now it's in the atmosphere. It definitely, one of my favorite Dr. King quotes is, faith is taking the first step without seeing the entire staircase. And just watching his speeches growing up and learning his speeches, and his motto was turn the other cheek. And for so very long, and I think you alluded to this so very eloquently about how King and Malcolm were viewed so very different because their approaches were different. Still black men, but his was eye for an eye. His was turn the other cheek. And so now, as we decades later look back at both of their works and how things are different, I think now we have more allies. And that's very important, because when we're talking about being segregated and discriminated against and the ills that are in our communities, it's important to have people that don't look like us to trumpet that if they feel the same way. And that, to me, is what began to change the movement. And that's what makes the progress that has been made so very incredible. But clearly, we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, no doubt. Letha, you want to chime in?
Yes, I was present and listening, and my mind went to two different things based on those comments. So from the health perspective, I'll just say that because that's what I was talking about. Clearly, we are living longer. We have access to resources that we didn't have. We have access to technology that we didn't have. I'm not saying it's optimal or it's perfect, but we do have that, and we do have better opportunities, resources, and power to do this, to be healthy. However, we still are living in the context of challenge around all of that. I think, this question I'm finding is a little difficult to answer, because I really valued preparing for this today. I read a lot of his speeches towards the end of his life. Mm-hmm. And his speeches were not different than Malcolm X, they weren't. Yeah. He was very direct. He called out white people over and over again for their complacency, for their promises that, that they didn't meet, for not showing up, for being silent. And I work in an institution, I'm around a lot of whiteness, and I think now being in the institution that I'm in, and I'm going to be as direct as possible, these folks aren't trying to fully change all the time. And I don't think that's any different than before. Mm-hmm. And the ability to lead through that kind of power, that kind of comfort, that silence, is not easy, but I think it's like the same challenge. And I feel, and I'm shifting a little bit, that our opportunity of what was the same then, of what is the same now, is the ability to be collective and operate in radical solidarity. It is fantastic that I'm sure we all work collaboratively in many different ways, and I think it's great that as individuals, and this was the whole drum major effect that he talked about, right? As individuals, great on one end, but also at the other end, wanting to shine and get the recognition. But how do we kind of steer back from that? And how do we work collectively and collaboratively? I can imagine if the three of us sat in a room and start to talk about the things and the resources, the ideas, whatever it is, we can come up with some radical stuff, and and I mean radical, I mean rooted, things that are really grounded. I'm not talking about crazy or out there, whatever that is, but rooted in a sense of justice for our communities. And I just think this context of being in solidarity with one another, we need to better embody that, or else we are not going to fully overcome what we're fighting against today, because those powers are strong.
Thank you. I'm going to change gears here a bit and follow up. But I'm going to come to you, Edward, but I want to follow up on something actually in Letha's presentation when she used the word reparations. And as we think about the 1950s and 1960s, the word oftentimes was justice and racial justice and inclusion. But in the ways where several of you spoke, we're also now talking about reparations and trying to figure out how do we have reparative justice in a world where some people are complacent. Edward, reparations is oftentimes sort of framed in terms of monetary support. what other kinds of ways should we be thinking about reparations?
Yeah, I really love the effect that you made that stand out, that it's not just monetary. Because I think that sometimes we can get a bit intimidated, and as you and I were talking about, they get scared of that, the money side of it. But as I was doing research when I was studying your questions, it's like it's not just money. It's access. It's symbolism. It's assets. And just specifically speaking to my generation, I know, many of us, as I said before, we get intimidated when it's like, oh, okay, well, we're not going to get multi-million dollars in like reparations, so we just give up on the conversation. But something that's happening in New Orleans right now is that we're going after the more tangible things at the moment. We're getting street names changed. We're getting Confederate monuments taken down. And I think that that's a start. But also, show me the money too. You know what I'm saying? That's right. You know what I'm saying? Like, show me the money, man. Like, so, and just kind of going back to your last question, like, I just want to add one piece because I really love what both of you said. And, I think that what you said about like racism and all of this becoming a little bit more sophisticated, right? It's not all in our faces. But I think that's something, a way that I would rephrase the question is, what can take place, to be different from when Dr. King was practicing. And I think that the fact that it's still us three up here talking about this is a problem. Stokely Carmichael said that, I didn't need a bill to tell me that I was human. They did. I didn't need it. They did. So I think that when we talk about allies and when we talk about people who are joining our side, we shouldn't be doing the rallying and we shouldn't be doing all of that in our communities. Bring it to your dinner table, bring it to your people, because I think that that's what's holding us back.
And I want to also expand on your great points, both of you. I left out the most important difference for me between when Dr. King was marching versus now. The revolution is televised now. That's the difference. Social media is the difference. You ready for this one? Blended families being accepted is the difference. It's hard to dislike black people when your kids in the basement listening to their music. Or loving them as athletes, or as entertainers, or dating them, or marrying them. And so now you're the 60, 70-year-old person that lived in a different time warp. And your son or daughter come into the room, they dating somebody that don't look like you. And you gotta be different now. That's what's changed.
Or be out of time.
Or here's the thing. Or now you're alienating your youth. Because they don't agree with you. They like, it's almost like you still walking around with a VHS tape. You know what I'm saying? They looking at you like you crazy. They're like, come on now, where the iPhone at? So that's what's different. The revolution is televised now.
Gil Scott-Heron was there. The job of moderator is also to be timekeeper, and unfortunately, we're telling me we're out of time. Which means that this is a conversation that really does need to continue in its own kind of way. But before we leave the stage, in 5 words, if you have 5 words you wanted to convey to the listeners here, either in person or online, what 5 words would you leave the audience with? Here, where I'm going to.
I got my 5.
Okay, all right, Jalen.
And I can easily say Chris, Jawan, Ray, Jimmy, Jay. I can say that one. How about this? Failure is not an option.
Yeah, there you go. Excellent.
Me?
It looks like you passed it on, okay.
I'm going to go back to my talk. I'll just say, give yourself grace
Wonderful.
and joy.
Thank you. Okay, Edward.
Mine would be choose your weapon of choice.
All right.
Because my weapon was the camera.
Yep. I want to thank you.
What are your 5?
Yeah.
We all can make a difference.
All right.
I want to thank the panelists for their remarks, for their insights, for their contributions. This is a conversation that doesn't just happen on this day. This is a conversation, I think, that should and needs to continue throughout the year. I also want to thank you, those of you here in Hill and online. And finally, I want to say, find a way to become a drum major for lasting reparative justice in your communities, in your lives. Go forth and joyfully engage in a little good trouble. Thank you.
Please join me in applauding again our panelists, Dr. Maybank, Mr. Buckles, Mr. Rose, and Dr. Lewis for this rich and inspiring discussion. I get the honor and privilege of closing us out with another treat for those of you who can not transition immediately. I hope you've been as inspired and recharged and energized as I have by that conversation. My brain is like a buzz, and as they noted, this conversation and the actions around it need to continue. Please take part in as many MLK Symposium events today and in the coming weeks as possible. Again, you can find more information in the program as well as on our website. Our closing performance, which is a treat in addition to the treats that you've already experienced. This performance reminds us that we're still in the battle for social justice, as witnessed by the ongoing struggles we face in our society that were so eloquently engaged and described by our panelists. It also reminds us that Dr. King's legacy still calls for all of us to continue to fight and to not lose hope. And with that, please welcome to the stage the voices of distinction from the Detroit School of the Arts.
And we will win.
fighting on.